When I informed my roommate her boyfriend had been arrested for assault, she replied, "You think I'm going to leave him simply because he has a disease?" You won't believe what I went through when my own roommate started defending a violent abuser, calling his rage a medical condition, and then blamed me for trying to keep us safe. What would you even do if someone brought a dangerous criminal right into your home and expected you to just live with it? Because that's exactly what Madison did, and it turned my life upside down. It all started one morning when Madison stood in our apartment, hand in hand with Jake. He'd just gotten out on bail for beating up a bartender. I looked at her, utterly floored. "Assault isn't a disease, Madison," I said, my voice tight. She just rolled her eyes, pulling him inside despite me explicitly telling her he was banned. "You're so ignorant about mental health conditions. Anger management disorder is a real disease." She said it like she was educating a child. A smug smirk plastered on Jake's face behind her. Our other roommate, Haley, walked out of her room, took one look at Jake and recoiled. "Madison, why is he here? We voted. He's banned." Madison just laughed, a dismissive, airy sound, and practically dragged Jake to the couch. "You can't discriminate against someone for having a medical condition. That's literally illegal." Jake, like he owned the place, plunked down and propped his feet on our coffee table, knocking Haley's textbooks to the floor with a clatter. "Besides," he added, "the charges were dropped." A blatant lie. I'd checked the court records that morning. "No, they weren't," I shot back. "He has a hearing next Tuesday." Madison waved a hand, as if swatting away a fly. "The bartender provoked him by cutting him off. That's basically assault on the bartender's part." Jake nodded, leaning into her. "Exactly, babe. He triggered my condition by refusing to serve me." Then he looked directly at me, a chilling, threatening smile playing on his lips. "Some people just don't understand invisible disabilities." My blood ran cold. I pulled out my phone, ready to expose him. He broke the guy's nose and gave him a concussion. "That's not a disability, that's violence." Madison snatched my phone, deleting the police report. "Stop spreading ableist propaganda. Would you shame someone for having diabetes?" Finally, Haley found her voice. "Madison, he also has a restraining order from his ex-girlfriend." Madison's face lit up, twisted with a perverse sense of validation. "See? Another woman who couldn't handle dating someone with a medical condition. The stigma is disgusting." Jake leaned back further, sprawling across the couch. "My ex was ableist, too. She called the cops just because I had an episode." Madison rubbed his arm, her eyes full of misplaced sympathy. "People don't understand that violence is just a symptom, like sneezing or coughing." I stared at her, dumbfounded. He pushed his ex down a flight of stairs. My voice rose. Madison stood up, angry now. "He didn't mean to. His condition makes him lose control sometimes." She stomped to the kitchen, rummaging through our groceries to make Jake food. "You wouldn't blame someone with Tourette's for cursing, would you?" Jake followed her, his eyes scanning the fridge. He pulled out Haley's labeled lunch. "This looks good." He started eating it straight from the container. "Jake, that's mine." Haley protested, but he just ignored her. Madison handed him more of our food, glaring at us. "He needs to keep his blood sugar stable. It helps with his episodes. If you two were supportive roommates, you'd understand." Just then a knock. It was Mrs. Coleman, our 75-year-old neighbor, her eyes wide with terror. "Is that man back? The one who was yelling last week?" Before I could answer, Jake appeared behind me. "You got a problem, lady?" Mrs. Coleman visibly flinched, stepping back. "Please don't let him near my apartment. I'm scared." Madison pushed past me, practically in Mrs. Coleman's face. "How dare you discriminate against him? He has a medical condition." Mrs. Coleman looked utterly confused. "Medical condition? He threatened to break my door down because my TV was too loud at 4 p.m. Madison leaned in closer. "That's a symptom of his sensitivity disorder. Loud noises trigger him." Jake smiled, a predatory glint in his eyes, making Mrs. Coleman shrink back further. "Maybe you should be more considerate of people with disabilities." Our neighbor practically fled, and I heard her deadbolt click from inside her apartment. Madison spun on me, her eyes blazing. "Look what you've done. You've turned the whole building against him." She stormed back inside, pulling my photos off the wall. "We need to make this a safe space for Jake." She tossed my memories into a box. "These might trigger his episodes." Haley grabbed her purse, her face pale. "I'm staying at my boyfriend's tonight. This is insane." Madison blocked her path. "You're really going to abandon us because Jake has a disease? What if he had cancer?" Haley shoved past her. Cancer doesn't give people black eyes, Madison. After Haley left, Madison's delusion only intensified. Jake's moving in, she declared. He needs a supportive environment for his recovery. I actually laughed, but it was a harsh, bitter sound. Recovery from what? He's not sick, he's violent. Jake shot up, his fists clenching. You calling me violent? Madison jumped between us. Don't trigger him. You know what happens when his condition flares up. She said it like it would be my fault if he hit me. If he touches me, I'm calling the cops. I warned, my heart pounding in my chest. Jake just kept getting closer. Your roommate seems pretty mad already. Maybe she needs medication. Madison gasped, a perverse thrill in her voice. You're right, baby. She probably has the same condition, but undiagnosed. She looked at me with fake concern. Your anger about Jake is actually a symptom. You should get tested. That's when Rick, our landlord, walked in, his spare key in hand. Jake Hoffman, he said, his voice firm. You're not on the lease, and you're not welcome here. He pulled out his phone, holding it up. Madison's fake concern immediately turned to full-blown panic as she grabbed his arm. Jake stayed on the couch, but his whole body tensed, coiled like a snake ready to strike. Rick shook Madison off, dialing. She threw herself between Rick and Jake, screaming about how Jake had nowhere to go, how stress was dangerous for his condition. She kept repeating the word vulnerable over and over, as if it were a magic spell to make Rick put his phone down. Rick finished dialing, phone to his ear. Jake stood up, agonizingly slow, his fists still clenched. He stared at Rick, unblinking. The silence was deafening, making my skin crawl. No one moved. No one breathed. Finally, Jake walked towards the door, but it wasn't the walk of someone forced out. He moved like a predator choosing to leave. He stopped right next to me, so close I could smell the stale beer on his breath. He leaned in, whispering, so quiet only I could hear, "This isn't over." Then he walked out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the pictures, still clinging to our walls. Madison ran after him, but Rick blocked her path. She screamed, pushing against him, but he stood firm, a solid wall. Rick put his phone away, looking at Madison with deep disappointment. He told her she was breaking her lease by having Jake stay, and if Jake came back even once, he'd start eviction proceedings. Madison's face contorted from crying to pure, unadulterated rage. She started yelling about discrimination, disabilities, lawsuits, threatening to sue Rick for everything he had. Rick just shook his head and walked out. The door clicked shut and Madison turned on me. The look in her eyes made me instinctively step back. I ruined everything, she screamed. I destroyed her relationship and Jake's recovery, and now he might never get better, and it was all my fault. Her voice grew louder with every word, until she was shrieking. Then she stormed to her room, slamming the door so hard something fell off the wall. Immediately I heard her on the phone, her voice muffled, but I caught Jake's name and words like, "Come back. When he's gone, we'll figure it out." My hands shook as I texted Haley, recounting everything. She replied in under a minute. "Staying at my boyfriend's for the rest of the week, maybe longer. Don't feel safe with Madison acting crazy and Jake threatening to return." I typed back, "I understand. Don't blame you." But now, I was alone in the apartment with Madison, who clearly wanted me dead. I locked my door, pushing my heavy dresser in front of it. Every creak, every sound made me jump. I heard Madison pacing in the kitchen in the hallway. Around 3 a.m., my heart leaped into my throat. The apartment door opened. Jake's voice, quiet, talking with Madison in the living room. I couldn't make out the words, but I recognized his voice. I froze in bed, barely breathing. They were out there for what felt like hours. I must have passed out from sheer exhaustion, because the next thing I knew, sunlight streamed through my window. I quietly pushed the dresser away, eased open my door, and crept down the hallway. Jake was asleep on our couch, Madison curled up next to him. My textbooks were scattered, a casualty of his feet. In the kitchen, every single thing Haley and I had labeled with our names was gone. Empty containers sat in the sink. They'd eaten everything. I pulled out my phone, taking photos of Jake, making sure the 7 a.m. timestamp was visible. Then the empty fridge, the living room mess. I sent everything to Rick. Jake came back last night and has been here for hours. Rick texted back within 10 minutes, coming over right now. Bringing police this time. I got dressed fast. I heard Madison and Jake starting to wake, their voices getting louder. I stayed in my room until I heard the knocking. Madison jumped from the couch as I opened my door. Rick stood there with a police officer, Officer Conway. Rick pointed at Jake. "That's the guy who's not allowed here." Madison started talking a mile a minute, claiming Jake had just arrived, that she was about to make him leave. Officer Conway looked at me. I held up my phone, showing him the time-stamped photos. His eyes narrowed. "Ma'am, do you understand you're lying to a police officer?" Madison's face went white. Jake stood up, trying to casually walk toward the door, as if he could just leave. Officer Conway stepped in front of him. "Wait." He radioed in Jake's name. The awful silence descended again, broken only by the crackle of the radio. "Bail violation." Conway looked at Jake. "You violated your bail conditions by being at this apartment after being banned." Jake started arguing, but Conway was already pulling out handcuffs. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." Jake looked at Madison, desperate for her to save him, but she just stood there, frozen. Conway cuffed Jake in our living room, reading him his rights. Madison lunged at me, hands reaching for my face, screaming that I was a monster who didn't understand real medical conditions. Officer Conway grabbed her shoulders, restraining her. She twisted in his grip, yelling that Jake needed treatment, not jail. He warned her to calm down, or he'd have to restrain her too. She kept screaming, calling me an ableist for sending an innocent, sick person to jail. Jake watched from the doorway, handcuffed, a weird, almost pleased smile on his face, enjoying her defense even now. Conway finally had to physically push Madison back to the couch. She collapsed, sobbing, "This is all my fault." Rick stood by the door, uncomfortable but resolute. Conway led Jake out, and I heard Jake tell Madison he loved her, that it would all work out. Madison screamed back, "I love you too. I'll wait for you." The door closed. The apartment was eerily quiet, save for Madison's ragged sobs. Rick pulled a folded paper from his jacket. He handed Madison a formal lease violation notice. "You have 48 hours to prove Jake won't return or face immediate eviction." Madison looked up, mascara streaking her face, and snatched the paper, tearing it into pieces. Rick remained calm. "That won't change anything. I have copies and they'll be filed." Madison stood, getting in his face, screaming he couldn't do this to her. Rick stepped back. "You violated the lease multiple times. Jake threatened other tenants and created an unsafe environment." Madison shrieked about discrimination, disability, and lawsuits. Rick just shook his head. "The notice stands. 2 days to comply." He looked at me. "Are you okay?" I nodded, though I wasn't. "Call me if anything else happens." He left. Madison turned on me the second the door closed. "You ruined everything," she shrieked. "You destroyed my relationship with the only person who truly understood me." I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. She stormed to her room, another door slam, another picture falling. I heard her on the phone immediately, muffled words. "Jake's name, come back when he's gone." My hands shook. I texted Haley, told her everything. She replied, still staying at her boyfriend's. She didn't feel safe. I told her I understood, I didn't blame her. But now, I was alone with Madison, who clearly saw me as the enemy. I went to my room, locked the door, and wedged my dresser against it. I tried to do homework, but my mind raced. Every creak, every muffled sound from Madison made me jump. Around midnight, I tried to sleep but kept waking. At 3 a.m., I heard the apartment door open again. My heart pounded. Jake's voice. I heard them moving around for what felt like hours. I must have fallen asleep from pure exhaustion. Sunlight. I opened my door, crept out. Jake was asleep on the couch, Madison next to him. My textbooks still scattered. In the kitchen, our labeled food was gone. I took time-stamped photos, sent them to Rick. He called me within 10 minutes. "I'm coming over now. Bringing police this time." I got dressed fast. I heard Madison and Jake stirring, then knocking. Rick was there with Officer Conway. Madison, panicked, claimed Jake had just arrived. I showed Conway the time-stamped photos. Madison's face went white. Jake tried to leave, but Conway stopped him. The radio crackled. Bail violation. Jake was handcuffed right there. Madison lunged at me, screaming I was a monster. Conway restrained her. Jake watched, a strange smile on his face, as Madison collapsed, sobbing about my fault. Rick served Madison the eviction notice, 48 hours. She tore it up. He just shook his head, saying he had copies. He left, asking if I was okay. Madison turned on me again, yelling I'd ruined everything. I retreated to my room and called my parents. My mom, worried, begged me to come home. My dad, calmer, asked about Jake's history. I told him everything, even about Jake pushing his ex-girlfriend down the stairs. My dad was quiet. You need to get a restraining order against Jake yourself, he said. He explained Jake would get out eventually. That made my stomach clench. He looked up the courthouse info, made me promise to go first thing in the morning. The next evening there was a knock. Madison's parents. Her mom started screaming at me, accusing me of ruining Madison's life. Her dad, apologetic, pulled me aside. He was worried about Madison had been for months. Jake was controlling her, isolating her. His wife thought Jake was passionate. He asked me to be patient. They'd try to get Madison into therapy. He understood about the eviction notice. Back in the living room, Madison's mom was telling her that men with strong personalities just need understanding women. She said Jake cared deeply. Madison's dad tried to interrupt, but his wife waved him off, telling Madison about her own father's temper, how she managed it. Madison's dad's face went red. That's not true. You're rewriting history. The argument escalated. Finally, they left. Madison went to her room. An hour later, she emerged with a duffel bag. I'm moving in with Jake's friend. You've all made me feel unwelcome. She said she'd still pay rent, but wouldn't be staying. I didn't try to stop her. Honestly, I was relieved. Before she left, she turned. You'll regret this someday, when you realize what you've done. She was gone. I locked the door, feeling relief mixed with worry for her. I texted Haley. Madison moved out. Safe to come back. She was there in an hour. We talked. Rick was changing the locks the next morning. Haley said her boyfriend's roommate might take Madison's room. I told her about the restraining order. She offered to come with me. We ordered pizza, tried to relax, but my mind kept racing. What would happen when Jake got out? The next morning, Haley and I went to the courthouse. I filled out the forms, detailing everything. The clerk said a judge would review it today. I waited 2 hours. Finally, they called my name. The judge, an older woman, read my paperwork. She looked up. Raise your right hand. I told her about Jake's threats, his clenched fists. The whispered, this isn't over. About his ex's restraining order, the bartender. I told her I was afraid. She stamped the forms. Temporary restraining order. 500 feet, effective immediately. I drove home, a wave of relief washing over me, until I saw my car. Keyed on both sides. Snitch gouged into the paint. My stomach dropped. I called Officer Conway. He arrived, photographed the damage. He knew it was Jake's friends. Jake's bail had been revoked, he was still in jail, but his friends were out there. Conway filed a vandalism report, suggested parking in different spots, varying my routine. He'd increase patrols. I felt violated, angry. That night, I couldn't sleep. I searched for Jake online. News articles, then court records from 2 years ago. His ex-girlfriend's restraining order petition. She described his charm, then jealousy, control, then violence. Grabbing her arm, pushing her. One night, he shoved her down a flight of stairs, broke her arm in 2 places. Photos of her injuries made me sick. Jake claimed it was an accident. The judge gave him probation. His ex moved states. This wasn't isolated. He'd do it again. Then I found a Facebook group, Safe Dating Network. 3 different women had posted about Jake. The same pattern. Charm, then control, then violence. Punching holes in walls, throwing phones, blocking doors, kicking down doors, slashing tires. All 3 described him blaming stress or mental health. All said he was calculating, manipulative. I screenshotted everything. The next morning, I emailed Constance Burnett, the district attorney on Jake's case. I attached all my evidence. She replied within 2 hours. Extremely helpful. She said a pattern of behavior strengthened their case. She asked if I'd testify. Yes, absolutely. I felt a surge of satisfaction. That afternoon, a long, rambling text from Madison. I was obsessed with destroying Jake, spreading lies, jealous because I didn't have a boyfriend. He was getting sicker in jail, and if anything happened, it would be my fault. The message was unhinged. I screenshot it, adding it to my evidence. Officer Conway said it probably wasn't enough to press charges yet, but to document everything. He suggested blocking her, but I wanted to keep the line open. A few days later, Haley and I met Rick. Madison was still on the lease for 8 months. If she stopped paying, we were responsible. It was complicated. We posted an ad for a roommate. That same week, a dark green sedan with tinted windows started appearing across the street. Always there at weird hours. I took photos, zoomed in on the license plate, sent them to Officer Conway. He ran them, registered to a Derek Caldwell with a history of assault and drug possession. He was Jake's friend, probably watching me. Conway paid Derek a visit, warned him about stalking. The car never returned. but I felt paranoid now. Every time I left, I scanned for watchers. I varied my schedule, parked in different spots. I bought pepper spray. I felt like I was living in constant fear. Jake's bail hearing. I sat in the back, my heart hammering. Jake was brought in, orange jumpsuit cuffed. His eyes found mine. Constance argued he violated bail, intimidated witnesses, posed a clear danger. Marshall, Jake's lawyer, talked about anger management disorder, claiming jail prevented treatment. The judge listened, then denied bail. Jake had violated conditions, threatened people, was a risk. Jake's face went red. He tried to stand, but the bailiff pushed him down. Jake turned, stared at me with pure hatred. His mouth twisted into an ugly sneer, fists clenching even in cuffs. The bailiff stepped between us. They led Jake out. He kept looking over his shoulder, his eyes boring into me until the door closed. I sat there, shaky. Constance asked if I was okay. I nodded. Later, another long, rambling text from Madison. I was responsible for Jake being locked in a cage. Cruel. Selfish. If he died in jail, it would be my fault. She hoped I was happy. I screenshot it, sent it to Conway. He said it was harassment, but probably not enough for charges yet. He suggested blocking her, but something made me hesitate. Maybe I wanted to see if she'd text again, or maybe I wasn't ready to completely cut off someone who used to be my friend. 2 days later, my phone rang. Unknown number. Isla Terrell, the bartender Jake assaulted. My body tensed. She thanked me for standing up to him. She'd been terrified to testify, but knowing others spoke out made her feel less alone. We agreed to meet for coffee. The next afternoon we met. Isla had dark hair, a slight limp. She ordered coffee, sat across from me, and told her story. Jake, friendly at first, ordering beer after beer, getting loud. She cut him off. He changed instantly, yelled, called her names. She tried to be professional. He jumped the bar, punched her. She fell into liquor bottles. He kept hitting her while she was on the ground. Broken nose, concussion. 2 days in the hospital, surgery. Permanent nerve damage. Jake's lawyer tried to get her to drop charges, claiming mental health crisis. But Isla refused. Jake knew exactly what he was doing. He targeted her. She was determined to testify. 2 weeks later, my full restraining order hearing. Jake on video from jail, angry. Marshall argued it was unnecessary. Jake was incarcerated. I testified, describing his threats, his clenched fists, his intimidation of Mrs. Coleman, his whispered, "This isn't over." Derek's car, Madison's texts. The constant fear. The judge granted a 1-year restraining order, extending it to Jake's known associates. I drove home. My car. Keyed again. Snitch. I called Conway. He confirmed Jake was still in jail. It had to be his friends. I felt violated. That night, I opened my laptop and started searching for information about Jake online. I found his ex-girlfriend's restraining order petition, describing the cycle of charm, control, and violence, culminating in him pushing her down a flight of stairs. Then, I found the Safe Dating Network group on Facebook. 3 other women, each with terrifying stories of Jake's escalating abuse, his manipulation, his calculated violence disguised as medical conditions. I screenshot everything, sending it to the district attorney. 3 days later, Madison knocked on my door. She looked terrible. Messy hair, dark circles, worn clothes. I hesitated, then opened the chain. She wanted to talk. I let her in, phone in hand, 911 ready. She sat on the couch, the same spot Jake used to claim. She looked around, tears filling her eyes. Jake's friend kicked me out, she choked. I can't pay rent. Nowhere to go. My parents won't answer. She admitted she was starting to think Jake wasn't who she thought he was. Part of me wanted to say, no kidding. But she looked so broken. I told her she could stay temporarily, but with 2 conditions: therapy and 0 contact with Jake. She nodded, looking genuinely sorry. This is your last chance, I warned. She promised. I heard her crying through the door for hours. Over the next week, Madison was a ghost, shuffling around, crying randomly. Haley came back, shocked to see Madison, but I explained. One night, around 2 a.m., I found Madison sobbing in the dark kitchen. Jake's friend had told her Jake was cheating on her, calling her crazy, saying he was only with her because she was easy to manipulate. She defended him, pushed everyone away, and he'd been laughing at her. I sat with her, letting her cry. She talked about how he isolated her, how he convinced her everyone else was ableist. She finally understood. The mental health condition was a tool for control. I suggested a domestic violence counselor. She got defensive. Jake never hit me. I carefully explained psychological abuse, manipulation, isolation, textbook emotional abuse. She sat quietly. I never thought of it that way. Jake always said he was the victim. I promised to help her find a counselor. Madison's first counseling appointment. She came back shaken. The counselor walked her through the timeline, pointing out red flags. She learned about Darvo, deny attack, reverse victim, and offender. Jake's exact pattern. She felt stupid. I told her abusers are experts at finding vulnerable people. She asked if she was a bad person for enabling him. No, I said, but you need to take responsibility for the harm you caused. 6 weeks later, Jake's trial. I testified first, describing his threats, his intimidation, his whispered promise of revenge, the constant fear. Then Isla described her attack. Broken nose, concussion, nerve damage. Marshall tried his anger management disorder defense, but Constance presented my evidence, the calculated manipulation, the multiple restraining orders, the pattern. The jury returned in 3 hours, guilty on all counts of aggravated assault. Jake exploded, screaming he was framed, discriminated against. Bailiffs had to restrain him. Madison, next to me, cried quietly. The judge set sentencing. 2 weeks later, Madison and I walked into the courthouse for sentencing. She looked different, more aware. Jake was brought in thinner. The judge reviewed his history. Prior restraining orders, violence, no remorse. 3 years in state prison, mandatory anger management. 5 years probation, permanent restraining orders. Jake stared ahead, finally out of energy for his performance. Madison cried, but it was for the person she thought he was. Outside, Isla was waiting. She hugged me, said she finally felt safe. She'd started a support group for other women Jake had targeted. Madison nodded before I could answer, and Isla hugged her too, proud of her. That night, Madison and I went to the support group. 6 other women, all with similar stories of Jake's charm, control, and violence, his excuses. Madison listened, tears streaming, realizing she wasn't special. Jake used the same tactics on everyone. When it was her turn, she apologized for defending him. The other women were kind, saying they'd done the same. Isla reminded us, Jake's manipulation wasn't your fault. The next weekend, Madison's parents visited. The most honest conversation they'd ever had. Her dad apologized, admitted he failed. Her mom was harder to convince, but eventually admitted she'd been in denial. They agreed to family therapy. Monday morning, Rick confirmed Madison could stay on the lease for the rest of the semester. Haley called, asking if it was safe. I told Rick Madison was genuinely working on herself. Rick made notes, said he'd reach out to Haley. I felt grateful for Rick's support. With Jake gone, I could focus. My grades improved. My psychology professor even asked me to share my story with her domestic violence class. Madison started volunteering with a local domestic violence organization, becoming a peer counselor. It helped her deal with her guilt. 3 months after sentencing, Madison told me she was transferring colleges, closer to her parents. A fresh start. Rick let her break the lease early. We helped her pack. Haley took over her room. On Madison's last day, we took photos, promised to stay in touch, knowing our friendship would never be what it was before Jake. Isla's support group grew. We lobbied local businesses, implementing better security training for staff, panic buttons. The changes wouldn't undo what happened to us, but they might prevent it from happening again. One afternoon, Mrs. Coleman knocked. Homemade chocolate chip cookies. Thank you for making the building safe again, she said, her eyes watery. She'd been terrified. She was grateful I'd stood up to him. She squeezed my hand, saying most people would have looked the other way. I sat on my couch, eating cookies, proud and sad. Standing up to Jake was necessary, but it cost me a friendship. On our last night together, Madison, Haley, and I ordered pizza. The conversation was awkward at first, then honest. Madison apologized again. Haley admitted she was scared to push back. I said I wished I'd involved Rick and the police sooner. We agreed to stay in touch, but acknowledged our friendship would never be the same. Some things just break people apart. Spring semester, I moved into a new apartment with 2 carefully vetted roommates, Olivia and Jess. Quiet, respectful, boring, but exactly what I needed. I told them up front about Jake, about why I was particular. They understood. A year later, I'm doing well, working part-time with a victim advocacy program that helped me. I help others navigate the legal system, connect them to resources. It feels good to use what I learned. Madison is doing well, dating someone who treats her with respect. Isla's bar implemented the new safety protocols. Jake is still in prison. We've all moved forward. Stronger, wiser. This whole experience changed me forever. It showed me the insidious ways abuse can masquerade as something else, and how crucial it is to trust your gut and stand up for what's right, even when it's terrifying. What about you? Have you ever had to stand up for yourself when everyone around you is making excuses for bad behavior? Or have you seen someone else go through something similar? Tell me what you think in the comments below. I really want to hear your stories.